And one of the points I've made, when talking about Calico in general is I think it's very sensitive to the price of silver. I think that's the most critical component of this project is the price of silver. You take $60 silver, if we could achieve that, the project is in operation. If you're achieving $65 and higher silver prices, you would have a tremendous project, like extremely robust. I'm sure of it. I think that certainly where silver is trading now, where it's traded for this entire year in 2025, would make Calico a pretty attractive project as a mining operation. So we don't have the economic numbers, so I got to be a little careful in the crystal ball comments out there until we can, get a third party review of the economics. That'll tell us what it does at different prices. But I think we can be pretty confident to say that the current prices of $65 an ounce silver, Calico is an absolutely important mining asset out there, and I think it would be quite attractive. So it's one that we want to continue focusing. That's why, we're happy to continue on this pathway towards project development and exploration. We think silver is the right place to be. This is a tremendous asset. Stay tuned. We continue to work also on our Mexican project, Cinco de Mayo. Again, there we're trying to unlock the social issues on the project in Mexico. And, if we can reestablish that social contract down there and get access back to the ground, move forward, that's a world-class asset out there and one that we want to get busy on and work. I think both stories are going to be very exciting for Apollo Silver in 2026 in a really hot silver market sector.
For disclosure purposes, our site does not make recommendations for purchases or sale of stocks, services, or products. Nothing on our site or this podcast should be construed as an offer or solicitation to buy or sell products or securities. All investing involves risk and possible losses. This podcast is for entertainment purposes only. For disclosure purposes, Apollo Silver is a paid-for client on the Investor Ideas website.
Ross, it's great to have you back on the show. You just came out with a press release that's pretty exciting yesterday. So I'd love to start the discussion off with that. So you're obviously doing a lot more work on the Calico project for Q1 2026. Do you want to just give a little bit of information on that?
Yeah, absolutely. And good morning, Callie. I think really what we were outlining in the press release is a full year plans for Calico. So everything from 2026. Maybe just preface it a bit. We'll be doing both an exploration program throughout the year, and we'll also be doing project development work. Really, the bulk of the program, the bulk of the activities is on the project development, which is doing the studies involved in order to advance that. So the 4,500 meter drill program is large core diameter HQ. What it's for is to get material that we can use for metallurgical studies. So we need to basically understand what the mineralogy is all about in the project, understand how we can enhance our recoveries. Currently, we're looking at about 65% silver recovery from the data that we have, but we think there's opportunities to increase that and perhaps substantially. So that's where the 4,500 meter program comes in. There'll be a bunch of drill holes in the Waterloo deposit. That'll collect data that we can use for metallurgical work and also for geotechnical. The geotechnical information is really all about mine design, future mine design, so planning. So as we continue to advance the project, all this information is critical. And just to touch on the exploration component I mentioned earlier, there will be ongoing exploration, which is outside of the deposits themselves. That's meant to advance targets on the rest of the property. A lot of that work is on the Mule claims that we've done, no work on yet to date.
Is there a different methodology that you're coming with, a new approach for the drilling program? I know that you're the CEO only as of this year for Apollo, but based on some of the historics, like, is this the same kind of drilling that you did before on the project, or is this different?
The difference being that the previous work was really meant about establishing the resource itself, the level of the resource classification. The last drill program that we conducted at Calico was on the Waterloo project, where we increased the resource estimate to primarily a measured and indicated. So it was all about establishing what level of category the resource will be classified at. This is different work because this is specifically meant to get new material that we can take to laboratory analysis for on the metallurgical side. So it's more engineering focused, if you will, to understand the nature, how well the ore processes, what steps do we need to do in order to achieve maximum silver when we, at the eventual processing of the deposit, and also to collect geotechnical data, which is different again. It's really what engineers would use to understand the strength of the rock and just see how you would design a mine for development. So they really are sort of a different focus of work. It's not meant to enhance the resource. It's more for other studies that are required for project evaluation.
For the silver improvement for recovery, I know you just mentioned that 65%. Like, what are some of the things that you're looking for in that improvement as you do all these geophysics and geotechnical work out there?
Yeah, well, things that we believe that could enhance recovery, anywhere from an additional, say 5 to, maybe even 15% or so enhancement would be to figure out what the ideal size of grind is all about. We believe we can get better recoveries if we produce an ultra-fine grind. So in other words, smashing the rock into a finer component in order to extract silver. We'll be looking at things like a fluoride leach enhancement. There's just probably 2 or 3 or maybe even 4 different techniques, both physical to grind the rock and also chemical. What's the right processing, the chemistry mixture in order to get the maximum recovery, because this is a silver dominant deposit. It's really all about how the price of silver and how much silver we can recover in processing. So every bit above 65% recovery have a huge meaningful impact on the economics. So there is a lot of justification to try to maximize the recovery that we can get in the ore. So that's really what it's kind of aimed at.
I think one of the other exciting parts of the press release is that you're doing the 1,000 meters to expand the Burkham. Can you just talk a little bit about the potential for that?
Historically speaking, Burkham was a producing gold deposit. So back in the day, it would be about 150 years ago when there was mining activity in the Calico area. Not only did they mine high-grade silver, but there was some gold mining activities there too, and that's what Burkham is, a historic gold mining operation. It's at the eastern end of the Waterloo deposit. So it's not surprising that we have gold in the resource. If you may recall in our mineral resource estimate that we published in the fall, there's 130,000 ounces of gold. The gold sits pretty much at the lower part of the silver mineralization, at the formation between the rock that hosts the silver and the underlying formation. That's where the gold is focused. We don't know as much about that as we do about the formation that holds the silver. So that's what, the 1,000 meters of testing around there is really designed to get a better understanding of the gold distribution and see if gold can be a meaningful part of the deposit as well. Gold's quite valuable, trading at over 4,000, what is it, around $4,300 an ounce right now. I think it's important for us to have a look at gold and just see if we can enhance the amount of gold that we see in the resource estimate as well. So that's kind of what that is about. We had done some mapping, some surface mapping and sampling in early 2025. You may recall we reported on that what would be about 6 months ago. And we did see a bunch of new anomalies and new things that we want to test with the drilling. So that's where the 1,000 meters comes in. It's not meant to look so much at the silver at the Waterloo deposit, the silver, but maybe more of the underlying gold or the gold that might be occurring periphery to the deposit. And there's also some other base metals in there as well. So it really is more of an exploration effort as opposed to, say, a resource development.
With your geophysics and your IP survey that you're planning as well, can you just talk a little bit about that? And I'd love to just touch on, as we're like discussing the Waterloo project, we've obviously talked about the barite and zinc before. Are all of these things also going to obviously not take away from the silver, but add?
Geophysics, what it allows us to do is image the rocks and a lot of the controls on why the mineralization is there in the first place. In other words, fault zones, different rock formations, alteration. You can measure with geophysics. So we'll do an airborne magnetic survey that tells you really what the rocks look like. It basically paints a picture that we don't otherwise see. You don't see it on surface. It's all about imaging subsurface, what's happening 50 meters below, 100 meters below. That's what magnetics is good for. We'll be doing an IP survey. This deposit shows up very clearly with an IP survey. So we know that we can see Waterloo, we can see Langtree very well with an IP survey, an induced polarization survey. We want to continue in other areas where we don't necessarily have outcropping of the silver mineralization to see it, but the IP may help detect hidden occurrences of silver mineralization, possibly, along the same contacts. So, I'm quite familiar with using geophysics as an exploration aid and a tool to find new deposits. It's certainly very powerful. We've got some great expertise in-house in the company, relationships with consultants that understand these types of surveys, and we think that it could lead to new discoveries. Really, that's the whole point of the geophysics. So, that the new ground, particularly the Mule claims, where we haven't done any work to date, that's one of the first stages of work that you do in a property. Start using geochemistry and geophysics to kind of focus in where we think the next area of discovery will be. And so that's planned throughout the calendar year. We'll be starting it in early 2026, but we'll probably do the IP survey towards the end of the year. So that covers the geophysics component. You were asking about the critical minerals, zinc and barite. And that gets back to the project development part of the program. I think barite is going to be important to get some more metallurgical work on that again, to see how well it processes, what kind of a product we could get. Ultimately, that determines, the value on a per ton basis of barite. So yeah, there'll be a focus on getting better understanding of barite. There's zinc there, but it might be a situation where it's not economic to extract it. But I think barite, on the other hand, has the potential to add to the economics of the deposit.
Can you just recap some of the information about your Mule claims for anyone that's missed our podcasts before?
Sure. Well, we acquired the Mule claims back in May of 2025. So we've had them for about 6, maybe close to 7 months now in the company. Those claims essentially almost close to tripled the size of Calico, the overall land package. It was a strategic piece of ground, the Mule claims, because they're on strike of the Calico fault zone that is responsible for hosting the Waterloo and the Langtree deposit. So we continue on with that fault zone to the east. That's what the Mule claims cover, and it also covers the right formations where we know that silver mineralization is associated with. So there's been very, very, very little work done on these claims, and yet we think that the potential for new discoveries on Mule, I think, are pretty high. This is a good strategic package contributor, I think, to the overall Calico project, and it's really time for us to start exploring it and see if we can make new discoveries along there. That's why we'll do the phased approach of mapping and sampling at the surface. We'll be doing the geophysics surveys in order to see what's happening at depth, and that'll set us up hopefully for some drill targeting probably in 2027.
I'd love for your commentary. Obviously, we're having a wild week with silver. I think it's 64 today, which is a great way to end the year. And obviously, Waterloo is a fantastic project for silver deposits going into 2026. So I'd love for you just to give your commentary on what a great end to the year for this year.
Oh yeah, no, it's incredible. I mean, but there is some wild fluctuations going on. I think when I first looked at the silver price, first thing this morning, it was up another dollar something. And the last time I looked, it was down, another 80 cents. I mean, it fluctuates. But the real, I think the news story here is silver's on a very powerful uptrend. We think that's going to continue. It's precious metals in general. Gold is going up. Silver's going up. Silver's going up faster than gold. I think that trend is going to continue, but just 2025, which already silver's more than doubled where it started, began in January at about $30 an ounce. Now it's, as you noted, it's over $60, 63, 62, 63, 64. That's the kind of range it's in. We think that this is still very, very early in the cycle of the uptrend in silver prices and gold for that matter. It's, I think, just the macro story for precious metals just continues to get stronger and stronger. And we see, I'm very bullish on higher prices that continue throughout not only 2027, but I think, for the long term, several years out.
I know we don't have a crystal ball here today, but about the potential of how much the Calico project makes sense with, if we stay at these current prices or above with silver, that it really becomes a fantastic asset to have.
Absolutely. One of the points I've made, when talking about Calico in general is I think it's very sensitive to the price of silver. I think that's the most critical component of this project is the price of silver. Silver less than $30 an ounce, it probably would not be an economic operation. Over 30, it starts to change, and you start turning the corner on economics. You take $60 silver, if we could achieve that, the project is in operation. If you're achieving $65 and higher silver prices, you would have a tremendous project, like extremely robust. I'm sure of it. I think that certainly where silver is trading now, where it's traded for this entire year in 2025, would make Calico a pretty attractive project as a mining operation. So we don't have the economic numbers, so I got to be a little careful in the crystal ball comments out there until we can, get a third-party review of the economics. That'll tell us what what it does at different prices. But I think we can be pretty confident to say that the current prices of $65 an ounce silver. Calico is an absolutely important mining asset out there, and I think it would be quite attractive. So it's one that we want to continue focusing. That's why we're happy to continue on this pathway towards project development and exploration. We think silver is the right place to be. This is a tremendous asset. It's on U.S. Ground and U.S. stories, U.S. assets, and particularly critical minerals are such an engaging story these days for investors. We think there'll be a lot of support for this project going forward.
Well, I 100% agree with that. Ross, as we come to the close, is there any closing remarks that you want to share with our following or current investors or potential new investors?
We're really pleased that we're able to announce a program at Calico. We've been spending the last several months getting things ready, talking about what will we perhaps do in 2026. Now we've got a plan laid out that gets us going. It's a lot of fun to be in this sector on this project. Stay tuned. We continue to work also on our Mexican project Cinco de Mayo. Again, there we're trying to unlock the social issues down on the project in Mexico, and if we can reestablish that social contract down there and get access back to the ground, move forward, that's a world-class asset out there, and one that we want to get busy on and work. I think both stories are going to be very exciting for Apollo Silver in 2026 in a really hot silver market sector.